Are you a Sagittarius? Maybe you have Sagittarius in your birth chart or you know a Sagittarius. If you tick any of those boxes, this is the video for you because we are exploring aromatherapy and essential oils perfect for Sagittarians to bring out their best and maybe settle down their not so good as well. Joining me is my fellow astrology and essential oil lover, Liz. How are you today, Liz?
I'm really well, and I'm excited for this because I think the medical astrology is really interesting for this.
Well, we will dive into that. And have you got many Sagittarians in your life?
Um, yes, I fall in love with Sagittarians very easily because my dad was a Sagittarian. My first love was a Sagittarian. I have lots of Sagittarian women who are just like my happy place in the world. Yeah, I'm very pro Sagittarius as a birth sign.
Very interesting because my mother is a Sagittarius and I'm the opposing sign Gemini. And it's interesting how, because we work together as well as have that mother-son relationship. But what traits is it about Sagittarius that you find that you're drawn to?
I like the way that they're very independent thinkers,
Hmm.
and I like the way that I will inveigle myself into everybody's problems and I'll be there to care for them as a Cancerian. I love the way that they go, I don't know how you got yourself involved in that. They just have a tremendous way of not being involved in stuff and still being kind. So I feel like I have a lot to learn from them. I think they're very funny people. They really make me laugh. They're very witty. And yeah, I just like the way Sagittarian people think and the way that they're able to be very caring without being in the crap. Like I have to get in the crap. Yeah.
I think if you want to have a successful party, ensuring there are at least a couple of Sagittarians is a real must. They do seem to be really good networkers. They're quite expansive. And that is one of the really interesting things I find about Sagittarius is basically one of their key driving life principles is to explore and find truth, the ever expanding and ever elusive truth. And this is where we come into some of their first essential oils that work really well with them. First of all, I really love the sage family. So this could be Clary Sage, it could be Spanish Sage, but these, we know the sage is really good for cleansing away energy, and that's kind of like our first point in how we want to use them. But after that, they really help to open the mind. And I think Sagittarians, because they are so interested in other people, they're interested in new pursuits, why they can be the life of the party is because they're actively engaged in finding out information. Whereas we may see in other star signs are a bit more selfish or self-centered or focusing on other things. Sagittarius is just like, I want to talk to as many people as I can because I'm going to get as many answers and truths and facts and new insights from new people. So the sages really help to kind of find those answers and to clear the way, to clear the clutter, help them in that seeking for truth, but also keep them in that expansive nature as well. So, Clary Sage, Spanish Sage, all the sages go for that with Sagittarius, I say.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a Sagittarian word, isn't it, sage? I mean, so I'll give you two sort of pointers about my dad. These are the two things that I really remember about him. He died 15 years ago now, but he's just like so in my thoughts all of the time. And he was a second-hand car salesman, so like that's not really something that you associate with like people who are very truthful, but he really was. And he would sit down, and people would just like talk and talk and talk about the cars that they wanted, and he would just sit there very quietly sort of clicking his pen because he would be thinking and just like accumulating data of all the things that he'd said. And he was so insightful with that, and it was you couldn't out argue dad whatever because he picked up all of the information because he was just listening. And the other side of him was he just knew a joke about everything, whatever way you talk, whatever you brought into a conversation. And it was a scout leader, so that shows, it was a inherently good person with a lot of fun in his spirit. And we went as I got older and I became a scout leader, I discovered that there was like this almost like secret sect of people in this one tent, and they'd be throwing subjects at him. Have we got a joke about trees? Have you got a joke about dogs? Have you got a joke about last week's football score? And he could just do them all because he had just got this enormous like repertoire in his head of information. And so while he was like a very good listener and a very good, a very funny person, the one word that people always associated with him was he's very sage. He's, he's very, very wise person. It's a tremendous recommendation. What I will say about the sages is we have to be very careful from an aromatherapy point of view, from a clinical point of view, that we don't group them together too much, too casually, because common sage, Salvia officinalis, and Clary Sage, really different in terms of safety. So common sage, for example, can really promote heavy bleeding in women. So it's a tremendous, tremendous oil to be used in men, but you would really, for most women, be very careful about using that. Clary Sage, however, are very easy to use. And what I will do for people who are interested on my channel, if I'll clip it in the description. I do actually have a video about the differences between sage and Clary Sage, because we don't want anybody to be going down any dangerous routes. But I would say any female should probably stay away from common sage until after they've gone through the menopause, but inhaling it is fine, but I wouldn't want it on their body. But what comes really interesting at a later time, because we'll talk about the medical astrology, is really good for the muscles and aches and pains. So men who do like sport, who've got really solid muscles and you can't get into them, a small amount of common sage, Salvia officinalis, just like I would say, like a 2% dilution goes right into their tissues, and that is part of the medical astrology. So excellent start, Adam. Where are we going next?
Good. Well, interesting. I've been, always reading and expanding my knowledge of astrology as we go along. And before the ancients could actually see Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the sky, the rulers of the different signs were slightly different, because Pisces, which we know the ruler now to be Neptune, was originally Jupiter as well. So you had Sagittarius and Pisces both ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is a large planet, very, very expansive. And traditionally, Pisces was exploration via the sea, so ocean voyages, and Sagittarius ruled over exploration over land and long trips. And so when we look at travel, Gemini is all about little short trips, but Sagittarius is like going overseas, going over land, going a long, long distance in that way. So Sagittarius are renowned for being the explorers as well. And so one citrus that I love to delegate to them is tangerine. Now, tangerine has a history, especially in the East, of being really protective of the traveller. So there is a tradition of placing tangerines in your house when you go away on a holiday or go away on a journey to protect the house. But you can also bring its energy in and just popping a few drops in a spritz with some water and spritzing it over you, the traveller. It helps to protect you, keep you positive, keep you upbeat, keep you aware as you go into uncharted, I was going to say waters, but uncharted lands might be the more appropriate one for the Sagittarius as well. This is a really, really great oil to bring out that Sagittarian nature of always curious, always wondering, and always looking for the opportunity in how you can expand your network, your knowledge base, or even your spirituality. So I love tangerine when it comes to Sagittarius as well.
Sorry to interrupt for just a moment. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Sixth Sense. Now, you're probably getting rather excited about essential oils, and you might be tempted to go out and just grab some. But did you know the essential oil world is not regulated, and a lot of what it says on the label is not governed by anyone? A fun fact, which is not so fun, is that 75% of all oils that are sold as pure, natural, or organic lavender are not even from a plant. So how do you know what's real? Well, I went looking for that question a long time ago, and I found doTERRA to be a really reliable source of high quality essential oils. They don't just test their oils themselves, but at the end of the process, they have an independent third party verify and double check their oils to make sure that you are getting what nature intended purely from the plant. They also source where nature intended the plants to grow as well. If you want to grab hold of some essential oils from doTERRA, then I offer a discount code, and this is available no matter where you are in the world. Now, I don't want everyone to get essential oils. I want everyone to use essential oils. So when you become one of my customers, you get access to me and my VIP education platforms, ongoing discounts, ongoing freebies, live classes in all time zones all around the world, and so much more. So if you're interested in getting some essential oils that you know are really from nature, and this is important not only physically, but metaphysically as well, please reach out in the links below.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Sometimes you'll talk about an oil and I'll just think, I just don't have a database to draw from. And I always think that when we go to Tangerine, I go, oh no, it's going to expect me to say something about it. But really, the only kind of data point that I have about Tangerine is I use it, or I work with her. That's illuminating itself, isn't it? I work with her when I'm coming up against somebody who is spiteful a lot, and that the spite, you can see that the spite is kind of sticking in their aura and has become like a thought form and is affecting their sort of perception of the world and their health. Now, I have to say, I don't know a spiteful Sagittarian. So that's really interesting. That's almost exactly like, because they just go, I'm not getting into that, and they're off. And I'm like, I wish I could do that. So that's really interesting. That's almost exactly their sort of vibration, I think. That's all I've got to say about that. Interesting. I'm going to look at it.
Well, one of the things we've been talking about with Sagittarius is their enthusiasm. They're very enthusiastic individuals. But now let's kind of look at when this enthusiasm becomes a little bit unbalanced. And this is where they may be the life of the party, but they can also be a bit obnoxious. They do risk maybe dominating conversations. They also can be the life of the party, but when it's time to clean up, they've already skittered off to the next adventure or the next fun thing. They're not the ones that will like to stick around for the boring things. They just want to rock up and bring the people together, spark the fire, and then they disappear to the next campfire or whatever as well. The other really interesting thing about Sagittarians is that because of that passion for wanting to explore different new things, they can, when they're unbalanced, have a tendency as well to have a whole slew of unfinished projects behind them. So this is where there's a couple of oils I'm going to bring in, and they're my two oils for an unbalanced Sagittarius. The first one is rosemary, and rosemary, we know mentally is really good for the memory, but it can also allow Sagittarius to remember, hold on, what's the bigger picture? Not kind of living day by day and going from party to party, but why am I doing this? What is my greater purpose in life? And I find rosemary really great for that. Of course, being ruled by Jupiter as well, rosemary is very strongly linked to Jupiter, and so they tie in nicely in that way as well. The other one I'd bring in would be Tulsi. And Tulsi is a really great one for helping you to narrow your laneway. Stop worrying about what other people are doing. In previous videos, you may have heard me talk about Tulsi being the oil for dickheads and not getting distracted by dickheads or getting caught up with dickheads and coming back to your greater journey, your greater pathway, your greater truth, or you're seeking for truth as well. So I feel if Sagittarius has kind of lost their way on what is the greater purpose of what they're doing in life, or that they're so caught up in having fun and being the bright spark that they are, that they're failing to actually notice other people around them, and maybe they're upsetting other people, they're not letting other people talk or so on. I would start working with rosemary and Tulsi to help them kind of settle the mind a little bit and be a bit more focused and aware.
Where do I go with this? I'm not going to speak to rosemary because rosemary is one of my oils for the medical astrology. In fact, it's my top oil for medical astrology. So I'm going to come back to that. But your recommendation for Tulsi, which is holy basil, right? So I have to tell you that was like quintessentially blasphemous about holy basil. Holy basil, Tulsi, is considered sattvic, right? So it's kind of got a similar kind of vibration as vetiver. It's very, very grounding, very, very purifying, but it's so pure that, for example, sapphic oils can't be part of like aphrodisiac because that's almost like tainting. So we should always keep Tulsi in the most pure light, and you're just throwing dickheads in. But I think that's exactly right, because it is just like stay in your pure lane and just, notice what's going on around you. Well, she's the embodiment of the goddess Lakshmi, she's and that's as Jupiterian as you get, really, to be honest. She's wealth, she's beauty, she's intelligence, she's wisdom. So again, an excellent recommendation, both excellent recommendations, but I will forever prohibit the word of the use of the D word in Holy Basil again, please. But again, fantastic.
Duly noted. So let's go on. Let's talk a bit more about the medical astrology, and let's also explore Rosemary from your perspective as well.
Okay, so, well, do you want to do your thing of trying to guess what Sagittarius rules? Although I think I've probably asked you enough times for you to be spying and looking it up by now.
No, I actually have not. So. And you must say, you get upset when you throw doozies at me. You've been throwing a doozy at me now for every single one of these. So we've been working our way down the body. I'm wondering if it's to do with maybe the hips, the legs, the knees, the joints, because I'm thinking about that ability to move forward in Sagittarius. That's going to be my guess.
That's beautifully articulated, and there's no way you didn't look that up. But also, and a much bigger rulership, is the liver, because of this, like the Sagittarius archetype is the Jupiter archetype, and Jupiter rules the liver. So we haven't really talked about the liver's, what the liver does. So it's like the foreman of the body, processes fats, processes our medicines, absorbs the nutrients from our body. It's really incredibly hardworking organ, and you could go deeper into this if you wanted to in my book, The Importance of the Liver, because when you're doing clinical aromatherapy, the liver is really sort of tantamount. But this idea of expansion, and I always say, like, if you're thinking about the Jupiterian archetype, if Jupiter were to catch a fish, it would be that big. It's all about expansion and huge and whatever. And so the liver takes a lot of a bashing in the Sagittarian archetype because it likes its food, it likes to party, it's having a good time, let's have another drink. And all of that goes in the liver. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, you talked about the joints. Absolutely right. The hips in particular, thighs, but fundamentally there's an important sort of aspect that you missed, and that's the sciatic nerve. So let's start with the sciatic nerve first. A specific for the sciatic nerve is rosemary. Rosemary is also a hepatic oil, so it's extremely good for supporting the liver. I will also ask you, what would you say the Latin name is of rosemary?
Oh, now you're throwing doozies at me and then getting angry when I throw doozies at you. The Latin name for rosemary is not something like Rosa Marianus, is it?
So it used to be Rosmarinus officinalis, and officinalis means a really old herb that we've always had in our things. So like Salvia officinalis, Rosmarinus officinalis. But I guess about 5 years ago, it was reclassified as Salvia rosmarinus, because they've identified that actually, we didn't really realize it before, but when you look at the chemistry, it is a sage. So again, you've got a really good recommendation there. So sciatic nerve, you would definitely want to have rosemary in place because of the way it helps nerve pain. You would definitely want to have it there because it's so good for the liver, supports the liver. And on my list, I've also put chamomile maroc for that reason. That's not really an oil we talk about very much. It's one of my very favorite oils. So we call it a chamomile, but it's Ormanis multicorlis, tremendous support for the liver. And then the third oil that I have on the list is peppermint. So you can see that the peppermint, again, has got like this cross section, the same as the rosemary. So good for focusing the mind, for bringing it down, and to like grounding, so that they're not overwhelming the party, as you say. Also a hepatic oil, so extremely good for supporting the liver. And also we're getting kind of technical into pain management now, but the nerves that go through the joints and through the muscles, within every sort of cell, there's what's called a TRP, kind of a receptor, like a messaging signal. And there's a specific one called TRPM8 that responds to menthol, which is in mint. And so if somebody has really bad pain, this is a really good way to tackle the pain, because it actually kind of helps to switch the nervous system down with the pain signaling. And so, as we've talked about with sciatica, really painful, nerve pain. So we've got these oils going through the nerves, but also specifically hip arthritis, for example. And what I will say is we'll talk about this further in next week's one in Capricorn, because it becomes relevant then. So if you are watching this and you think, oh, I want to know more about that, look out for the Capricorn video. But the actual arthritic joints, which really happen in Jupiter, because bear in mind, they got big livers because they're getting fatter and fatter and fatter. That's the thing. That's a lot of weight on the hips. And so peppermint can be really helpful there. And of course, going through the hips, that's the sciatic nerve as well. So everything kind of coalesces in the mind and in the body exactly the same. It's really interesting how you came to the same oils as I did, by a completely different perspective.
Yeah, really interesting as well. And I think the liver makes so much sense because it is processing so much, and kind of everything goes through the liver. It's almost like everything goes through Sagittarius as well, that they want to filter and process as much information as they can gather, and they're always expanding and doing that as well. So the liver fits really nicely with Sagittarius, I find, as well.
So just to stress, there was quite a lot of quite complicated science in a small section then. So none of that I've covered then was new. So if you have a look at the playlist that we've done of the different oils that we speak of in this video, you'll be able to go deeper into those. So particularly if you're interested in the peppermint, you'll find that in there. The rosemary, you'll find it in there. So do have a look at the playlist and go deeper into the safety of the different oils and the different ways to use them. Yeah.
So remember, we always love seeing your feedback in the comment section. So if you're a Sagittarius, we'd love to know, are there certain essential oils that you're drawn to? Or maybe if there's a Sagittarius in your life, try some of the essential oils around that we've been speaking about today, and let us know how it turns out. We'll be back next week to discover. We've got 3 signs to go, and it's no guessing who's next. We'll see you next week to talk about them. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye-bye.
I'm Elizabeth Ashley, UK Director for the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy and founder of the Aromatic Mystery School, where essential oils meet the deeper, more mystical side of healing. Here you'll explore the spiritual, emotional and energetic dimensions of plants and learn how to weave them into your own rituals and well-being practices. If you're ready to work in a way that nourishes both your soul and your senses, join us at the Aromatic Mystery School. The link's right below.